A rifleman in Vietnam is sitting on a stack of sandbags with a can of ammunition open between his boots, loading magazines. Each magazine holds 20 rounds. He puts in 18. He picks up the next one and does the same thing. And the next one. Every magazine he owns, every time for the whole year he is in that country. He is about to walk into terrain where a firefight can start at 10 feet, and he is deliberately leaving rounds on the ground. He is not being careless, and nobody had to tell him twice. He was correcting a design problem with his thumb, because the people who built the rifle had not corrected it yet, and the difference between 18 and 20 was the difference between a weapon that fired and a weapon that did not. Today we are going inside that decision, the specific piece of physics that makes a full magazine dangerous and a slightly empty one reliable, which almost nobody outside the infantry has ever had explained. What happened to a spring that sat fully compressed in a jungle for 3 weeks? The far bigger scandal sitting underneath it, in which the United States handed its soldiers a new rifle, told them it barely needed cleaning, and then quietly changed the ammunition it ran on. What men were found holding when that went wrong. The comic book the Army had to print to fix it. And at the end, the part that says the most about soldiers, the men kept loading 18 for the next 50 years, long after every one of these problems had been engineered out. If this is worth your time, a like helps push it in front of the men who were there. And tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from. I read all of them. Start with the object, because it is smaller and cheaper than you think. The magazine issued with the M16 in Vietnam was a 20-round box made of aluminum, not steel. Aluminum light enough that a man could carry a lot of them, and thin enough that the feed lips at the top could be bent by being dropped on a rock, stepped on, or crushed in a pack. It was not originally intended to have a long life. The concept when the rifle was adopted was closer to disposable than durable. Fire it, drop it, take a new one from supply. That is not what happened. Supply did not work like that in a country with no roads, and no soldier alive throws away a piece of his own loadout because a manual says it is expendable. Men reloaded the same magazines for months out of the same ammunition cans sitting in the same mud. So the object at the center of this story is a thin aluminum box carrying a spring that had been designed on the assumption it would be used once and was instead used 400 times. And here is the detail that makes the 18 a deliberate act rather than a rough estimate. Ammunition did not arrive loose in a bucket. It came in cloth bandoliers with pockets, and inside those pockets the cartridges were held in stripper clips of 10. 10 rounds to a clip. There was a small guide that fitted onto the top of the magazine so a man could push a whole clip down in one stroke instead of thumbing them in one at a time. 2 clips filled a magazine exactly. 10 and 10, and you are done. And the magazine is at 20, and the arithmetic is clean, and the box is closed. So loading 18 was not a man losing count. It was a man putting one full clip in, starting the second one, and then stopping himself 2 rounds early on purpose every single time, against the obvious tidiness of the number. He had to decide to do it. And when the guides ran out, which they did, he did it with his thumb. Ask anybody who spent a night filling magazines by hand out of an open can what the side of his thumb looked like the next morning. Now the mechanism, which is the whole reason for the 18. A magazine spring does one job. It pushes the column of cartridges up so that the next one is waiting in position when the bolt comes back forward to strip it out and drive it into the chamber. For that to work, the spring has to push with enough force to lift the stack fast enough, and not so much force that the top round is jammed against the feed lips. Load that magazine to full capacity, and you are at the extreme end of that range. The spring is at maximum compression. Every round in the column is pressed hard upward, and the top cartridge is pinned against the feed lips with the entire force of the stack behind it. Two things go wrong there. The first happens on the reload. If your bolt is closed and you try to seat a fully loaded magazine, the top round has to be pushed down and back past the underside of the bolt as the magazine goes up into the well. With the spring at full compression, it does not want to go. You slap the base of the magazine it seems to seat, and it has not. You have a rifle with a magazine hanging half in the well, and you find out in the worst possible second. The second happens on the feed. A round pin too hard against the lips does not release cleanly when the bolt strips it. It drags. In a rifle that is already dirty, already hot, and already running faster than it was designed to, drag is the beginning of a stoppage. Take 2 rounds out, and both problems relax. The spring is working in the middle of its range instead of the end of it. The top round sits with pressure instead of being crushed. The magazine seats on a closed bolt with a slap and stays there. You give up 2 rounds. You get a rifle that goes when you pull the trigger. Every man in that country made that trade and made it the same way. There is a second reason, and it has to do with time. A spring held under load for a long period does not stay the same spring. Sustained compression causes it to take a set, which means it relaxes and stops pushing with the force it was built to push with. Cycle it, and it recovers. Leave it squeezed flat for weeks, and it does not. Now think about the actual life of a magazine in the field. It is not loaded in the morning and emptied at the range that afternoon. It is loaded, put in a pouch, and carried for days, for a week, for 3 weeks, between contacts, in heat and wet, riding against a man's ribs. The magazine loaded to 18 spends those 3 weeks at less than full compression, and the one loaded to 20 spends them flattened. So the 18 was doing 2 separate jobs at once. It fixed the geometry today, and it protected the spring for the month you were going to be out there. Nobody wrote that on a card. Men learned it from other men in the first week, from somebody who had been there 4 months. And all of it, every bit of it, was a workaround for a much larger problem that had arrived with the rifle itself. Here is what the M16 was supposed to be: light, startlingly light, next to what it replaced. Low recoil, so a small man could control it on automatic. Modern, plastic and aluminum in a world of wood and steel. Firing a small, fast cartridge that did terrible things at close range in thick country. On paper, it was exactly the rifle for that war. In several respects, it genuinely was, and it arrived with a reputation, spread through briefings and word of mouth, that it was so advanced it barely needed cleaning. That message did enormous damage, and cleaning equipment did not arrive in the quantities that would have argued against it. Men were handed a new rifle, told it was largely self-maintaining, and sent to the wettest, dirtiest working environment the American infantry had ever operated in. Then the ammunition changed. The rifle had been designed and tested around one type of propellant. The decision was made to load service ammunition with a different one, a ball powder, for reasons of production capacity and cost. That substitution did 2 things that nobody at the front was told about. It burned dirtier, depositing far more fouling into the gas system and the chamber of a rifle whose owner had been told it did not need much cleaning, and it raised the cyclic rate. The rifle ran faster than it had been designed to run, which meant the bolt was trying to extract the fired case earlier, while chamber pressure was still higher than it should have been. Combine those with a chamber that was not yet chrome-lined, in a climate that put corrosion on bare steel overnight, and you get one specific failure that defines the entire scandal. Failure to extract. Here is what that is, and put yourself in it, because this is the moment. You fire. The case expands against the chamber wall, as it is supposed to. The bolt comes back to pull it out, and the case does not come. It is stuck in a chamber that is fouled, corroded, or both, and it is being pulled on too early and too hard. So the extractor tears through the rim of the case. It rips the metal and slips off, and now the bolt slams forward again on a chamber that still has a fired case in it. Your rifle is not jammed in a way you can clear. There is no drill for this. You cannot rack it, you cannot slap it, you cannot pull the charging handle hard enough. The case is welded in there. The only way to get it out is to push a cleaning rod down the muzzle and hammer it out from the front. That takes both hands, a rod you may not have been issued, and time you do not have. Stay in that for a second, because it is the worst 30 seconds available in that war. You are prone. There is fire coming from somewhere ahead of you, and men on either side of you are still shooting. So the noise tells you the problem is yours alone. You pull the charging handle, and it comes back about an inch and stops against something solid. You do it again harder, because everyone does it again harder. Then you have to make a decision that no part of your training prepared you for. You have to roll onto your side, take your eyes off the front, and take your rifle apart in the middle of a firefight. You are looking for a thin steel rod in sections, and the sections have to be screwed together. Your hands are wet. If you drop a section in the grass, you are not going to find it. Then you feed the rod down the muzzle of a barrel you have just been firing on automatic, which means it is hot enough to burn you, and you hammer the stuck case backward out of the chamber with the heel of your hand. And the entire time, the thing you are actually thinking about is not the rifle. It is that the man to your left has noticed you are not shooting. Some men carried the rod taped to the stock for exactly this. Some carried a second rifle's worth of parts, and a number of them quietly acquired something else, an AK, a shotgun, a grease gun, anything with a reputation for going bang, and kept it near. Men were found after actions with their rifles broken open, or with a cleaning rod in the barrel. That is in the record, in the testimony, and in letters that soldiers and Marines wrote home to their families about a weapon they had stopped trusting. Those letters are what broke it open. Families took them to their congressmen. In 1967, a special subcommittee of the House Armed Services Committee, chaired by Representative Richard Ecord, investigated the rifle, the ammunition change, and the maintenance guidance, and its report was severe. Sit with the shape of that for a second, because it repeats. The men in the field knew there was something wrong with the rifle almost immediately. They said so, constantly, and for a long time the institutional answer was that they were not cleaning it properly. It took letters home, families, a congressman, and a formal investigation before the institution accepted what every rifleman already knew. That pattern is not unique to the M16, and it is worth knowing that it is still running. If you served, or you are the son, daughter, or widow of a man who did, the list of what is now presumed connected to that service has changed more in the last 4 years than in the previous 40. And a denial from decades ago is not always final. I put together a plain English file on what the rules actually say today. Link is in the description and the pinned comment. The fixes came, and they were real. The chamber and bore were chrome-lined, which is a genuinely effective answer to both corrosion and stuck cases. A heavier buffer was introduced to bring the cyclic rate back down. A forward assist was added so a man could force a bolt into battery. Cleaning kits were issued properly, with the rod stored in the stock, so it was actually with the rifle when he needed it. And the Army did one more thing that tells you how badly the maintenance message had failed. It printed a comic book, not a manual with illustrations, a comic in full color, with cartoon panels and speech balloons, drawn in the style of the newspaper strips those 19-year-olds had grown up reading, walking them through cleaning the rifle step by step in plain language. Whatever you think of that as an artifact, it worked, and it is the clearest possible admission of what had gone wrong. The Army had told men the rifle did not need cleaning. Then it had to teach an entire army to clean it, and the only way to get that read was to make it look like something you would read for fun. Now the ending, and it is the part that says the most. Every problem in this video eventually got engineered out. Chrome chambers, correct buffers, better magazines, steel followers. In time, a 30-round magazine, which solved the capacity question the 20 had created. And men kept loading 18, not for a year, for decades, long after the specific defect that made it necessary had been fixed. Soldiers were still downloading their magazines, teaching it to new men as a thing you simply do, and often no longer able to say exactly why, beyond the fact that it worked and that the man who taught them had been right about everything else. That is the real subject here, not a spring, not a powder, not a subcommittee. It is that once a soldier stops trusting the thing his life depends on, the distrust outlives the defect. You can fix the rifle. You cannot go back and unfix the year he spent finding out he could not rely on it. Go back to the sandbags, a 20-round magazine, 18 rounds, a thumb, and a young man who has decided that he will take a small, certain loss in order to avoid a large, uncertain one. That is not superstition, and it is not a shortcut. It is field engineering, performed by the only person in the entire system who is going to pay for getting it wrong. If you carried one, I want to know two things. How many did you load? 18 or 19 or all 20? And who taught you? Did a sergeant tell you? Did the man next to you show you in your first week? Or did you work it out yourself after something went wrong? And if you were there early enough to have carried the rifle before the chrome chambers, tell me what your unit was told when men reported it. The best account in these comments becomes a future file, and that is not a figure of speech. Several videos on this channel started as a comment from a man who was there. If this was worth your time, leave a like, because it puts this in front of more men who lived it. Share it with somebody who still argues about that rifle, and a lot of men still do. And subscribe for more of what did not make it into the textbooks. One more thing before I go. If any of this sounded like your own tour or your father's, the presumption rules today are not what most people think, and old denials are not always the end of it. The plain English file is linked in the description and pinned below. To the men who fixed with their thumbs what the system had not gotten around to fixing yet, and who were right about it years before anybody official agreed, this one was for you.